Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. We have a busy room this morning. I would say I'm happy to see you all, but I couldn't possibly see you all because there's nearly 250 of you here so far. So whilst we are allowing everybody else who's pouring in from the waiting room to join, I'll just say good morning, of course. First of all, my name is Sarah Edmonds. I am one of the co-directors of the National Retrofit Hub, joined this morning by my co-director, Rachel Owens,
Morning, everyone.
and by our chair of our board, Lynn Sullivan.
Morning.
And we will also hear from a whole selection of our working group chairs and co-chairs and technical leads this morning. Cara, I see you can't hear me. I presume everybody else can hear me. I'm going to say yes because Rachel and Lynn did. So it might be an issue on your end, Cara. Hopefully you can get that sorted. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Please keep yourself muted. And if you can keep your video off, it might help with bandwidth. If you have any issues with that, we're coming close to 300 people in the room now. We would love to be able to take direct questions from you all, but as you can see, we've got a packed house, and we also have a packed agenda for you, so we won't be able to do that, but we will be keeping an eye on the chat, and we will be holding on to that chat to make sure any observations that you have or any questions that you have that we can get to, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can engage with us during the course of today's event. Get your phones at the ready. We're going to be asking 3 different questions throughout the session, and we'll be using Mentimeter to do that. We are recording the meeting, and we will share the meeting notes and the meeting slides. So Ben, can I ask you to pop onto the next slide, please? Yes, so this is where you are. I hope this was the meeting you intended to come to this morning. It's our first open meeting. Really excited to be able to share the breadth of work that's going on, at least part of it, in this meeting this morning. We'll try to make sure that we are a hard stop at 11:30 to allow you to get on with your day. Ben, can you pass on to the next slide, please? Okay, this is the exciting piece. Now, can we ask you to scan the QR code in the corner of the screen and just let us know who you are. We've tried to put down a selection of people. Oh, look at that. We're already on it. So you know how to do this. We'll give it a minute or two and select who you are. I'm going to have a go too. This is great. That's really interesting. Okay, still we have lots of consultants and designers, local authority representing other. Can you please maybe drop us a note? We thought with 11 categories we wouldn't have as many others, but that's really interesting. Perhaps if you selected other, academic, how dare us that we forgot that. Yes, please do. Tenants, lovely to see you. Thank you for being here. So if you are academics, I see people doing that. That's great. Amazing. That's brilliant. So great. Okay, we'll let that run for a little while, just for a little couple of minutes, well, another 30 seconds, shall we say. How many do we know how many have? Oh, we know percentage wise, but
So we've got 340 people in the room and 13% local authorities. So, we've got maybe 45 people from local authorities.
oh, there's a social media influencer in the room that popped up on the screen. That's not somewhere we've been engaging particularly much on, except for obviously Rachel doing excellent work.
And
But
yourself, Sarah.
influencing, maybe it's a new role for us. Okay, I think we'll possibly just let that tick if you want to for another just 30 seconds, and then I think we're going to move on because we want to stick to time, I think. And it's sort of slowing down anyway with new additions, isn't it? Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much. This really does help us because we need to understand who we're reaching, and we want to also understand who we can engage with better. So thank you for that. Ben, dare we move away from the fun slide? Okay, I'm going to hand over to Lynn Sullivan now, who's going to give you the backstory. Thank you, Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, and good morning to you all, and a warm welcome. So we launched the National Retrofit Hub almost exactly a year ago in March 23, with the support of our pioneer sponsors and UKRI, Innovate UK. And as I said on that occasion, our focus was what we as an industry can do to stimulate the necessary impetus for retrofit. And so by way of background, I thought I'd pick a few milestones in and around the formation of the hub and the context in which we're working to help us to renew momentum on the delivery of that aim. So the hub builds upon the National Retrofit Strategy, which we founder board members co-authored or were instrumental in getting Construction Leadership Council support for. And it set out the potential for UK, the big potential, economic, environmental and social, for UK-wide retrofit scale-up. And we pinpointed the issues which need to be understood better, and also the interactions and how we potentially these, through understanding, could work better together, as well as pointing out the co-benefits. So our modus operandi as a hub is to develop a network of people and a network of knowledge, building on the work that many of you have been engaged in over the years. Next slide, please, Ben. So many of us were involved in COP26 in Glasgow in late 21, and following that, through the Green Construction Board and the Construction Leadership Council, we lobbied Chris Skidmore after the launch of his Mission Zero review. And his 2023 report had a clear recommendation for a hub to act as a coordinating body to help facilitate local retrofit delivery. And to hold the evidence base for what works. And actually, he wasn't the first to recommend a hub, of course. Paul Morell and Peter Hansford spring to mind, but we won't go there. That's history. So this certainly helped us establish the hub, and with the benefit of the great work from our team, who unbelievably have only been in post for 6 months or so, as well as yourselves and all our industry participants. So during this intensive 6 months, really, I feel we're just getting to the point where we can reflect on both the micro examination on our themes and start to really exploit synergies at a macro level. Next slide, please, Ben. And to bring us bang up to date, really, the latest in a long line of responses to government's net zero policies, I was struck by the Grantham Institute reiterating the case for investment in retrofit. And I'm sure many of you pored over the commitments following COP28 last year. And it does appear there's an assumption in government that simply switching to heat pumps meets the COP energy efficiency commitment, which I think was doubling the global rate of energy efficiency improvements, but thereby delivering a 2/3 reduction in domestic energy use by 2050, as the national grid projects, and assuming that the national grid decarbonizes at the necessary speed. But the Grantham report quite specifically calls for energy efficiency and demand reduction alongside the installation of zero emissions heating, and highlights the cost implications both of the retrofits needed and the social consequences of rising energy prices and scarcities in the context of global markets. So of course, these are very live issues for us in the hub and in our working groups, as well as obviously all the issues of human comfort that go alongside them. So thank you again for joining us, and we're looking forward to hearing the overview today and to your collaborations with us going forwards. Thank you.
Thanks so
Lynn,
much,
I've got to
Lynn.
commend you for being absolutely on time. That is amazing. Now she set the bar very high.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn, and thanks so much for your support for the last 6 months. It's been an absolute whirlwind, and we're really looking forward to sharing with you what each of our working groups have been up to so far. And we're going to pass over to our working groups, chairs and technical leads to take you through what we've been up to. But before we do that, before you hear too much more detail, we wanted to ask you an initial question. And we want you to reply with just 1 or 2 words. What value do you think the National Retrofit Hub should bring to the retrofit sector? You're coming at this probably having participated a little bit, or you might be brand new, or you might have participated a lot. We want to hear your sort of initial thoughts before we get started. And then we'll, at the end, have a similar sort of question to see if any of that's changed or if you've still got similar thoughts and theories. So please do add words. You can add the same words as other people and then they grow, or you can add new words yourself, and we'll report back on this to the rest of our members. We can see their collaboration is coming up strongly, which is great. It's one of those words that Sarah and I say all the time, and we know that there's so much amazing work already going on in the retrofit sector. So the hubs really has a mandate to make sure we make visible what everyone's doing, allow people to speak to one another. We can also see coordination, knowledge, resources, awareness, guidance. So yeah, lots of topics here really ringing a bell for us in terms of what we think is important.
And community is growing in there as well, which is interesting. That's really fascinating to see.
That's great. Okay, it looks like we've got almost 300 responses now. Thank you so much for all your engagement. It's really good to see you all actively engaging. And yeah, let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. So yeah, as I mentioned, we have 6 different working groups. You're going to be hearing from either the chairs or technical leads of all of these groups today. They're going to give you a bit of a snapshot of a couple of specific objectives they're working on. But in the background, there's going to be a Miro board that we'll share. So you'll be able to see all of that in the context of the wider objectives of each of the groups and all of the different work streams that we've got going on. So to start us off, I'm going to hand over to working groups 1, and then working group 2 will follow straight after. Working group 1 will be Louis Danincourt from Novaville. He's our technical lead on that group. He's been working with Dr. Asan Khan from Trustmark Research and Innovation, who's chairing the group. And then Louis will pass straight on to Megan Adlam from Travis Perkins and Jade Lewis, who are our co-chairs of working group 2. So Louis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining the call today. It's good to see so many people here. So yeah, working group 1, we've been working on lots of bits and bobs, really, which in many ways, everything that's sort of been left out by the other working groups, because they don't necessarily neatly fall into a particular category like finance or like supply chain, but bits that are crucial nonetheless. So Ben, if you don't mind going to the next slide. What we've done is we've approached things by looking at sort of 4 questions, which a typical homeowner looking at retrofit might ask themselves. So the first one, being what is the home? How can we characterize the place that we're looking at? What do we know about it already? What gaps exist in our knowledge about the home? And this is ultimately a question about data. There is a lot of public data available about homes, but where is it? How can we access it? How can we store it? How can we make it usable and actionable? And so this has led us to work on property logbooks, also called green building passports by others, but essentially repositories of data about buildings. And I'll tell you a bit more about that work in a second. Second question is around, okay, now that I've got the data, what can I do? We need to use the data to come to decisions about how to progress with upgrading the building. On what basis can those decisions be made? Who ultimately decides how a la carte should the sort of menu be? And so we've started thinking about the use of building archetypes to determine what one can do, about improvement plans, how they should look, what they should incorporate, and thinking about how can pattern books also help retrofit designers to plan interventions. There are two other questions and 2 strands of work where we haven't necessarily started formally working on yet. The first one being QA, which is obviously crucial. How do we de-risk things for the customer? How do we raise standards in the industry and make sure that the payers understand the potential consequences of their choices? So there'll be a lot of work there to do on sort of buyer education, on helping people understand, who are the consultants that they're working with during their retrofit journey, what kind of qualifications they have, where can owners and ultimately payers get advice from people who carry the proper sort of insurance, etc. And finally, the fourth question is around sort of handover and monitoring. After the installation, how can we check that it's had the desired effect? How do we calculate that? How do we report on it? And what other measures should be taken next? So I think the work that we've put on building passports and improvement plans definitely inform that strand of work, but there's going to be more to do, more to explore around that, such as using like metered data post installation over time to validate the predictions that were made pre-installation. Ben, do you mind moving on to the next slide? So with those sort of 4 guiding questions in mind, I'll give you a bit more detail now on the 2 strands of work that we've focused on so far, and where we've got outputs that are that have been drafted and are ready to be peer reviewed. So the first one is on archetypes. We know archetypes can be super useful for segmenting building stock. Can be useful as an engagement tool to speak with proprietors, and also to essentially design retrofit work for 100 properties when you're really only analyzing 3 or 4 model homes in detail. But there's been a lot of debate in the industry about its potential misuse as well, because while archetypes can provide a useful guide, they're not the same thing as a plan. They'll show a range of possible interventions, but that shouldn't really come at the expense of precision, and there's definitely a trade-off there between scale and precision. So we've produced quite a large SWOT analysis on archetypes, which led to the production of a sort of 2-page guidance for retrofit designers, with the aim of helping them use archetypes for their projects and design archetypes for their projects, trying to help them understand what that segmentation can do for them during the project and how they should use it to engage owners. We've compiled a list of projects and reports that have made use of archetypes, so that you can see sort of how this approach has been deployed in the wild in the past by practitioners. And both of these things are in the sort of final stages of drafting at the moment, and they'll be available for peer review within the next few days and weeks. Ben can move on to the next one. So a second output of working group 1 has been around logbooks. Now we know that logbooks, make a lot of sense. You've got one for your car. Why not one for your home? If you go on a website to do with anything car related, you'll pop in your number plate, and it will tell you that your car is a Peugeot and it's failed its MOT 3 times or something like that. So why not have that for your home? With a logbook, you can have a record of what the building is, what it's made of, what work's been done to it, how efficient or not it is, etc., etc. And basically, logbooks are the place where the data about buildings will reside, and data is the raw material with which a retrofit plan can be created. But what data is actually useful, and where is that data, and how can it flow from where it is to where it needs to be? And at what cost, if there is going to be one. So 6 property logbook companies have come together inside the Residential Logbook Association, which is chaired by Nigel Wally, who might be on the call, and are helping the National Retrofit Hub work in this space. So we're doing 4 things here, which you can see in the sort of targeted outputs box. The first thing is around mapping out the space for logbooks. What companies are out there offering them, what kind of data do they cover. The next 2 bits are around essentially creating the market for logbooks, supporting the supply side by helping, for instance, government recognize their importance, stimulating the demand side, of course, by raising awareness about logbooks. And the 4th aspect is probably the most important, which is about ensuring interoperability between those data repositories. There is no point in recreating siloed data sets, in other words. Today, data is the commodity on which we're going to build future homes and refurbish existing homes, and that data has to flow. But for that data to flow, you need one thing. You need a data ontology for retrofit, a data schema, a data structure. Probably a data scientist would say that these are all different things, But essentially, if we're putting building data on a spreadsheet, we all need to agree on what the columns are, what the rows are, what the definitions for these things are, and making sure that when we put a data point in, it's the same data point that someone else, it can be read by another property logbook somewhere else. So we're currently designing a program of work to determine that data ontology for Retrofit. We're doing this with the Residential Logbook Association. We're going to be interfacing with the Open Property Data Association, who have done similar work in the conveyancing space. Obviously, we're not going to start from scratch, but we're going to build on existing work that has been done, such as that of the British Standards Institute. So while we can say, ensuring interoperability via an agreed data governance framework, this is going to take you can say that in a few seconds, but it's going to take a lot of time to finish that program of work. And it's probably something that we'll try and get some external funding for. So so in short, working group one, we're looking at the sort of perhaps smaller but crucial bits and pieces, as I said. We've got sort of 4 key issue areas, 2 of which we've kicked off a lot of work about. And yeah, we're looking forward to sharing those outputs with you and continuing with the ones that we haven't started tackling yet. That's it from me.
Thanks so much, Louis. Now we'll pass straight on to Megan and Jade.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jade Lewis and co-chair of Working Group 2. The first thing that you'll probably notice about this working group is that we've slightly changed the name. I think it was originally about technologies, and a lot of feedback we were getting is that Retrofit is about more than just the technology, it's the fabric and many other things sort of thrown in. And actually what we want to do with this working group is move the hub and others in industry around what's right for the property, the occupant and the workforce, and taking a bit more of a slightly holistic approach to Retrofit. And where Working Group 1 is about what's needed, we're about, how do we deliver that? What are the solutions? What are the products that you need to deliver that more holistic retrofit? If we can get the next slide, please, Ben. Thank you. So we've got 2 core themes. The first one is making sure that we are solution agnostic in our approach to what products, technologies and services are needed. So we absolutely need to be looking at reducing demand on energy, so energy efficiency, thinking about the fabric and the ancillary measures to make sure that there's no unintended consequences, so things like ventilation coming into that. We absolutely need to look at decarbonising heating, and as Lynn said earlier, there's this understanding that it's just about heat pumps. Well, there's other technologies in there as well, and we often forget about hot water and decarbonising in that area, so that needs to be looked at. The smart controls and performance improvement, we need to be thinking about adaptation. All of us are overheating, living in flooding, lots of things going on with the climate at the moment that needs to be incorporated. So it's about wider health, safety and well-being as well. And it's broader sustainability. We've had lots of feedback about including embodied carbon and circular economy approaches into this. But it is absolutely about that, taking into account what the building needs, what the consumer needs, and what the workforce needs as well, and making sure that we're agnostic in that approach. And the second theme is about the barriers to the supply chain, to delivering this, and to innovation. And I'll hand over to Megan.
Thanks, Jade. Hi, I'm Megan Adlen, co-chair with Jade for Working Group 2. We've got 4 key objectives that hang off those 2 core themes, and for delivering a solution agnostic approach to products, technologies and services. First of all, as Working Group 2 is really focused on that agnostic approach, we're going to work closely with all 5 other working groups in the National Retrofit Hub to make sure that that agnostic approach is taken, and to surface all of the different products, solutions and services available to help the most efficient outcomes to be achieved, both, as Jade said, for properties, the tenants and the workforce. Secondly, very practically, we are looking to put together a hub of information to surface the range of product solutions and innovations available through case studies, so that we can prove the effects and the outcomes that those product solutions innovations have had. Thirdly, identifying opportunities and overcoming barriers for supply chain, very likely to develop a set of recommendations around the barriers that we identify. And then similarly for innovative solutions, it's absolutely imperative that we enable the flow of innovation through the value chain to enable retrofit. So we're going to be looking at those barriers too. If we hop onto the next slide, so we're going to look at the second objective there, which was on showcasing the range of options available through case studies. The targeted outputs that we're looking at for this is, first of all, presenting those case studies against a standard template, so that, you know, we want to avoid is kind of the surfacing of the good news, but not the acknowledgement of some of the other bits. I think it's really important that we take a quite a considered approach to how we surface that information. And then the second point there is also around the quality of the information that we're sharing. So having a process to assess the quality and integrity of the product solutions and innovations that are put forward for case studies, so that we can make sure that it is absolutely fit for purpose and right for sharing. It's not that we haven't considered who to work with the TBC on the right. We absolutely have. In fact, there were so many that it made that box look incredibly busy. So we've purposefully left it empty to ask the rest of you on the call today, as part of today's session, let us know if you have got some good ideas of where we can get case studies, or if you'd like to be involved in that, have any suggestions. Pass to you, Jade, for the next example.
Yeah, great, thank you. Anybody that's working in this space at the moment and developing new products will know how complex it is, and there are many barriers to people trying to get innovations into the retrofit sector, and particularly if you're an SME, this is very, very challenging. It's a complex landscape. We've got SAP Appendix Q, PAS 2030, Trustmark, insurances, a lot of processes put in place to protect the consumer, but they were put in place without innovation in mind, so there isn't a process for getting your innovations to market. There's lots of work been going on in this area. I kicked off some of that when I was working at the SEA. So we've got Innovate UK, Desens, Energy Systems Catapult. They're all trying to work behind the scenes to get a process in place to make this a little bit easier. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We'll build on that work that's ongoing, and we will support that as our work stream. We also need to feed into the work that's going on around SAP and EPC reform, and make sure that we're engaging with that, and understand any gaps that aren't being addressed at the moment that the hub can actually take forward. And again, we ask that if anyone's in this space that are working on things like this already, please come forward and engage with us, get involved in the work stream, tell us what you're doing, and then we're not sort of redoing what you're doing already and the great work that's going on at the moment. That's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jade, Megan and Louis. So we know that there's a lot of you in the room. There's going to be a link in the chat to the Miro board now. This board will let you see not only the objectives and the outputs that Louis, Jade and Megan have just talked through, but also all of the other sort of outputs that we're projecting for each of these groups. We only had a short amount of time, so we've only been able to share 2 per group talking to you, but this board shows you all of them. So Ben, if we can perhaps go to the Miro board, what we'd like you to do is tell us 3 things. What's missing, who's doing work we might not be aware of, and also where do you see the value for yourself? Where do you see the value for other stakeholders? We want to understand who these outputs might be useful for and what we should be prioritizing. I'd recommend you all turn the cursors off. There's probably going to be a lot of you in the Miro board. You can see at the on the top banner, there's a little triangle with some lines next to it. So I think if you click that, you can turn all the lines off, and Ben's showing you how to do that through the view settings as well. So you can use the post-it notes there to answer the questions. Please do keep putting in different bits of information. We're going to leave this Miro board open as well for a week after this meeting. So you might not be able to access it right now, or it might be too busy, or your computer might be just far too slow to be able to handle all of the participants who are in the board. So please do engage with it afterwards as well. I don't know, Ben, if we've got any comments.
Well, I was just going to say as well, some of you may not be familiar with Miro. So if you do anything by mistake, don't worry, we have locked the objective lozenges, I suppose that's the shape they are. We have locked those, so you shouldn't accidentally delete that. We have got a backup in case you do, but hopefully you won't be that creative in terms of being able to wipe out the whole thing. But please add comments and thoughts. And specifically, I think, as just to reiterate, so important for us to understand not only who can help us, but who you think would benefit from some of this. And by having that flip of thinking around the activities, we can really start to focus the audiences for this information, as well as who can support us delivering it. So we'll spend another couple of minutes. We'll just keep an eye on the Miro board for a bit. You may as well be much more interested in the activities of a particular working group, so you can spend some time familiarizing yourself with some of the other objectives in those groups.
I can see lots of cursors with names flying around the board at the minute. I think you're all just getting to grips with it. And we've already had one from on the Whole House route map. Groundworks Yorkshire have talked about how they lead project centres around this, so we'll definitely be engaging there.
There's a practical question in the chat about what the Miro password is. I don't believe we have it set with a password. Is that correct, Ben?
There shouldn't be a password.
It may be that you've got something on your own end, because we've kept it open.
I can see that 100 people are in it now, so I think it might be that their account or.
Okay. If, like we said as well, be circulating the link to people afterwards. So if you can't get into it just now, you'll be able to spend some time over the next week getting access, because I know that all of the new, all the different apps can provide requirements from different organizations for passwords or what you're allowed to do.
It's great that there's lots of Whole House worked up examples going in. So yeah, the Cambridge Homeowner Retrofit Guide is a great one. We also know that there's a really fantastic archetype guide published, the Devon Retrofit Guide, worked up by Field and Clegg Bradley Studios. So there's a few of those that we'll be publishing to that library that Louis discussed during his update.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we'll let you keep going on that, and then maybe I'll pass over to you, Sarah, for the next working group sessions.
Yes, can I ask as well, can we just drop the Miro link one more time in the chat, because I think some new joiners have arrived and would like to be able to access that, please. Thank you very much. Yes, so we will maybe move on to the next slide. We're asking a lot of Ben. Thank you, Ben. So now we're going to hear from Working Group 3, Workforce Growth and Skills Development, and Working Group 4 on Finance. First, we'll hear from Cara Jenkinson, and we'll pass directly on to Emma Harvey-Smith after that. So Cara, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cara Jenkinson. I am co-chair of Working Group 3, along with Pippa Palmer from London South Bank University. And unfortunately, Pippa's been off sick since December with long COVID, but pleased to say that she's recovering and hopes to resume work on the working group in the next month or so. And I'm very delighted to say she's on the call today. So that's great. So the focus of this working group is developing the workforce for retrofit. And we know that there's a significant skill shortage across many of the roles needed for both home energy efficiency and heating decarbonisation. We need new entrants, as well as the existing workforce, to be retrained. And we need to diversify the workforce and provide attractive and secure jobs. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we set up 6 task and finish groups, which are shown here. The first, roles, qualifications and career pathways. That's the first. Then second is addressing training providers, colleges and private, and training infrastructure. Then there are 2 groups that look at skills development in the privately purchased segment, primarily owner-occupiers and private landlords, and at skills development in the publicly procured segment, which also considers project practice. Task and finish group 5 addresses getting more people and more diverse people into the workforce. And finally, task and finish group 6 looks at the policy and funding required from the first 5 groups. And what's important here is that we have a skills ecosystem. All of the bits need to be in place. There's no point getting the qualifications defined if the training providers don't have the teachers that can teach the content. So each of the task and finish groups 1 to 3 have met twice, and we've developed a theory of change, defining a potential role for the National Retrofit Hub, and task and finish groups 4 and 5 have met once. We fed back to an advisory group with members from the skills sector in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. And we had an all working group meeting 3 weeks ago. And huge thanks to all of those who've participated in those task and finish groups so far. I think one finding common to all task and finish groups is to effectively train people in retrofit. Requires a functional construction and building services skills ecosystem. And unfortunately, that ecosystem isn't working fully yet. Transactional subcontracting hinders skills development. Procurement doesn't prioritise training. Specialised qualifications are more suited to new builds than maintaining existing stock. And there's a lack of investment in training generally. There are moves to improve this ecosystem, and there's a real opportunity, given the urgent need to retrofit homes, to push ahead with this reform. And if we can get it right, we can really improve the health and longevity of our buildings and the people living in them. So at the last Working Group 3 meeting, we presented some of the good stuff that's going on. There's a lot going on in this area. Excellent initiatives from Exeter College, including a retrofit training centre, and from the Installation Assurance Authority, who are working on a new installation apprenticeship and documenting career pathways. There are others, plenty of others doing great things too. Supply Chain Sustainability School launched their new online retrofit training modules and programme. The Retrofit Standards Task Group working on the new retrofit coordinator occupational standards. And then each of the 5 net zero hubs planning their regional skills pilots. And with so much going on, the role of the National Retrofit Hub is key. Sharing the various initiatives, best practice, identifying gaps and linking people up. And we are actively doing that a lot already. Next slide, please, Ben. So in terms of deliverables, we've produced a map of qualifications and informal training, which is now on the National Retrofit Hub website. Maybe someone could put a link in for that. And it's important to note that we have not endorsed any of this training. We focused mostly on the PAS and construction roles so far. And we're going to be updating regularly. So please do check it and let us know if there are qualifications that we've missed. Next slide, please. So we've identified a number of potential future outputs, ranging from a review of training for roles associated with retrofits, things like planning, programme procurement, building control, to an influencing campaign for builders merchants, who are such key players, particularly with SME builders. We're also developing a checklist for regional retrofit skills plans, which should prove helpful as local net zero hubs develop their business-funded skills pilots. I don't have time to go through them all, but I've noted one potential initiative here, and that is to commission a campaign to promote working in retrofit, including a series of video case studies for use by colleges, schools, and careers advisors. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Cara. That's fantastic. We'll pass straight into finance now.
Cheers. Thanks very much. And lovely to be here today. Emma Harvey-Smith from the Green Finance Institute here, and also joined by colleagues from Bankers for Net Zero. So really delighted to be here today. I'm going to give an overview of what the Finance Working Group has been exploring. And if we just jump to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the ambition for Working Group 4 has really been to try and foster collaboration between the finance community and the retrofitting sector. We understand that addressing climate change is not a siloed challenge, so we cannot take a siloed approach to our response. And so by bringing together the finance sector and the retrofit community, we hope to try and identify opportunities for collaboration and to try and meet our common goal. And the group has been co-chaired by the Green Finance Institute, Bankers for Net Zero, and by the Grantham Institute. And we have dived straight into some of the thorniest issues. As you'll see on the slide, we've been looking at how EPCs can be improved to support retrofitting. We've looked at what the barriers are for retrofitting finance and how both sectors and communities can overcome those challenges. And our next session is going to be looking at how finance can be embedded into the retrofit journey to make the customer journey as smooth as possible for individuals looking to improve their homes. And so to give you a quick deep dive on what we've been doing, I'm going to hand over to Heather, who's going to run through the first example.
Yes, thanks. I think we're on to the next slide here. So thanks, Heather Buchanan, Bankers for Net Zero. And I think I want to broadly kind of put a bit of context in here in terms of finance, because I think there's often a perception that finance is it's difficult to access, or that there's not necessarily even an interest from finance in these areas. And because of commitments that financial institutions have made in terms of decarbonising their finance emissions, this is an area of intense interest for financial services. And I think that this working group and the National Retrofit Hub, we really want to use this forum as a way to kind of break down some of those silos. So we've done working groups around collaboration, getting lenders together, getting some of our members, as well as the National Retrofit Hub delivery partners, including county councils and whatnot. There's a very, very clear call that we've got in terms of really that we need to have consensus on retrofit policy direction. And that's critical for finance as much as it is for everybody that's on the ground kind of doing it and getting this, and to get those kind of fiscal incentives and policy clarity. One of the big challenges that the financial institutions said they've got is actually the demand for finance. So they're not actually seeing that the level of demand that they would like and that they need in order to innovate and create. And we've absolutely recognized that there's probably a policy element in this as well, in terms of the behavioral change element of things. So, and the incentives where government can step in and kind of help move that along. And one of the big challenges, of course, was how to incentivize home improvements in a way that drives energy efficiency. And there's a couple of emerging themes that are going to inform the next session, and that's really around data and modeling. And so I was very interested actually in Louis' presentation earlier when we were talking about EPCs and data. We're just in the process of working with National Retrofit Hub on an EPC reform campaign, and we'll put a link in the chat to that, because we'd love to get kind of more engagement on that piece. But the key on this data piece is it now needs to be financial grade data as well. And so we're very keen to make sure that we get, as EPCs emerge and as potentially building passports emerge, or anything like logbooks emerge, that the data and the data flow is sufficient for really financial grade decisions. And that's what's going to really bring the cost of capital down as well for a lot of this stuff.
Oh, Heather, I think that you've just muted. We could hear you a second ago. There you are, you're back.
I don't know how I managed to touch this. That I didn't touch anything. So in terms of our next steps, we are going on to an EPC reform piece. We've had meetings with officials and ministers from DULAC, and that is moving on to the next steps. And so we really want to push getting that data alignment, because that's really going to help unlock a lot of what we need in finance.
Thanks very much, Heather. And diving into what the second convening of the working group looked at, the Green Finance Institute hosted a roundtable back in November to try and explore what the barriers were to retrofit finance. And the ambition was to bring together an intimate roundtable with leading experts from the finance community, including Nationwide and Barclays, and retrofit experts as well. So we had People Powered Retrofit as one of our speakers, as was Retrofit West. And the idea was to share both a candid perspective on what each sector was exploring, and then also try and myth bust some of those concerns that each sector might have about the other. And really the aim was to try and support and encourage greater connectivity between the sectors and foster collaborative solutions. And I just wanted to share with you today a few of the insights that came from each of the sectors. And mirroring what Heather was saying just then, we have seen the green mortgage market, as an example, grow from just 4 products in 2019 to over 60 products today. And they have a variety of benefits for customers, from lower interest rates to free energy assessments. However, interest rate and cost is not proving to be the driver of demand by customers. And in fact, as Heather said, the demand from customers is very low because we're not seeing incredibly high volumes of retrofitting coming through. So finance will follow where there's projects. It won't necessarily drive projects. And so what the lenders are actually starting to look to do as they innovate their products is actually to start to collaborate with retrofit providers and energy companies in the market, and starting to have partnerships that will provide a really smooth end-to-end journey for their customers. On the retrofitting side, we heard that your clients are incredibly keen to explore good financing offerings, and where can retrofit providers actually point their customers towards, but also that actually there's a recognition that it is in many respects a fragmented industry, and therefore quite challenging to foster these partnerships between the retrofit and the finance community. But the banks are very open and interested to have a conversation about that. So what we really took away from the roundtable, there's a shared ambition to deploy energy efficiency technologies into homes. There's an agreement that finance and retrofit needs to work together more closely to ensure that there is a smooth customer journey. But also a big takeaway was actually, finance is a really important facilitator for retrofit, but it is not the driver of retrofit. It needs to be there, sitting in the background, acting incredibly smoothly for customers. And so where are we going next? As we mentioned, we're looking at how this finance can be embedded into that retrofit journey. And hopefully many of you on Working Group 4 have received the invitation to our next session at the end of March, which I think is open to all Working Group members. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel. And we're delighted that Barclays are going to be hosting that session for us. So hopefully it'll be a very interesting conversation. Conscious of overrun, so I'll hand back to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Emma. That was really interesting. And thank you, Heather, as well. And Cara, we did cover quite a lot of ground in those last 10 minutes. So thanks very much. So now we're going to go back into the Miro. So if we could have the Miro link in the chat again for the benefit of anybody who didn't have it the last time, or those of you who are already in there, and I can see lots of cursors flying about. So there we go again. Well, actually, Ben has helpfully, oh no, they're all back. I was going to say, probably switch them off. We don't need it to be a presentation. There we go. So you can see, as Cara mentioned, we really benefited from an awful lot of work that both Cara and Pippa had been involved in for time before the hub was established. And that is a continuation of research that has now been brought into the hub. So there is a lot of objectives mapped out against each of those task and finish groups in there. It's quite a mature piece of work, and it is, immense. So get in there amongst the weeds and have a read of what you can, and suggest in the same way, who can benefit from the outputs and the outcomes. But also there's a really broad engagement in this group, but if you know of others, or if you are here in the room and you haven't engaged with us, then please let us know. And similarly with finance, this is something that we're all finding our feet with. Lots of interesting things, lots of innovative things happening in finance. And it's just great for us to sort of get our heads around what else is out there. There's obviously also going to be connections across the working groups. I just wanted to touch on Emma's opening gambit about the fact that, it's not a siloed solution, any of this. It's not like if we fix one of these bits, then we can just park that and get on with fixing the other bits. It's not the case. So there are also things that will run across in a horizontal format, which is the next sort of activity for us to look at how these pieces connect. And we're starting to see obviously very deep connections coming out between finance, delivery, and driving uptake. But they all are ultimately part of the same big piece systems challenge that we have, which is retrofit. So I think what we'll do is, because I think everybody's sort of familiar enough and we still have, 90 people in there, we'll move on. And we will now hear from our final two working groups. We're going to hear from Dr. Donald Brown, who is one of our co-chairs for Working Group 5. And I'll also just jump in a little bit at the end of this one. Donald and I work really closely together on all things in delivery. And we'll also hear from Cara Holmes, who is the chair of Working Group 6. Cara is from Citizens Advice. So a little bit more to hear. Thanks for bearing with. And Donald, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Donald Brown, Director of UK Programmes at Ashton, and I'm also a research fellow at the University of Sussex, part of the New Energy Demand Research Centre, looking at a lot of these topics with an academic eye. So yeah, very pleased to be chairing this group. Next slide, please. And just close these chat pop-ups. So really the aim of Working Group 5 is to understand how retrofit is delivered today and how we can actually improve the delivery of retrofit tomorrow. So that is about identifying opportunities to enhance, improve and escalate existing models of delivery, and also look at those new models, because we know we are not delivering enough retrofit at sufficient scale to meet our climate change goals, and also to address the sort of low standard of housing we have in the UK and our grinding levels of fuel poverty. So to do that, we've really initially placed a large focus on the customer journey and how the customer journey sits within the wider delivery ecosystem today. So largely before Christmas, we've been mostly spending our time mapping retrofit delivery, particularly in Great Britain, so that's Wales, Scotland and England, but also looking more further afield at where we can learn from elsewhere, particularly countries like France, the Republic of Ireland, who have made a lot of progress compared to the United Kingdom, and also Germany. So that process is largely now complete. We've gathered a lot of data and information from various sources. We've ran a number of, similar to other groups, task and finish groups. I wish these pop-ups would stop me. Lots of task and finish groups with looking at different areas of this, so grant funded, retrofit, social housing delivery, but also what's going on in the able to pay or willing to pay space through things like one-stop shops and the like. And we've been pulling that together into a report which will be available soon, which we'll talk about a bit on the next slide. The aim of all of that is really to understand what is best practice today. So where are we being effective in the delivery of retrofit? What can we learn from the various schemes that exist today, which will tell us about how to design the schemes of tomorrow? So that will sort of be put forward into what we're calling at the moment a best practice support infrastructure, really where we can try and support groups right down from local authorities to community organisations to even large tier 1 contractors who are aiming to support and enact retrofit delivery at scale. So that really is our aim in this working group. We're also interested in broadening our perspective to think about how can we look at the retrofit issue as a system. How can we move away from our siloed thinking in terms of individual tenures or fuel poor, not fuel poor, and think about scaling local delivery at the neighbourhood level. So that's another area that we are going to be expanding into in the months ahead, with emerging examples of that happening. Next slide, please. So yeah, just to sort of emphasise where we are today, we've been pulling together this sort of state of the nation report, so looking at all the different schemes that have happened in the recent past, ECO, the LAD schemes, SHDF, what's going on in Wales through Nest and Arbed, and what's also happening in Scotland, to really build as much intelligence as we can about how things are working on the ground today. And we've had lots of fantastic input from many of you on that process. So that will take the form of a short, hopefully not too wordy report, which we are sort of in the final throes of drafting at the moment, which will be put out there into the world soon. Yeah, and that's really sort of summarising the state of the nation and where we are today. We also are looking at developing a range of best practice case studies and organisational profiles, which I think are going to be integrated into how the NRH website works at a later stage. But I'll now pass to Sarah to talk in a bit more detail about some other sort of strands we're thinking about as key outputs.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to say, I think the sheer volume of research and how much has happened already is not to be underestimated. There are very, very heavy Miro boards in existence in the background for that one. Thank you, Donald. So this is just a brief one to say one of the other objectives that comes up time and again, and I'm sure lots of you on the call will be familiar with this, but there isn't really any kind of pathway or formal recognition or support in place for community-driven retrofit initiatives. And we are seeing a lot of that happening. There's a lot of groundswell in communities who are looking at each other saying, hang on a minute, we need to do what we can where we are. And there's some great examples of that from, you know, Retrofit Balsall Heath, Local Home Retrofit, and others who I know are on the call today, who really started from where they were. And what we're trying to suggest is that we need to be able to support more of that. Partly because we understand that the cost of retrofitting is obviously immense, and we are often overlooking latent capacity within communities, and that's something that we really need to support better. So investment in capacity building is really important. What we think some of the targeted outputs will be sort of more resources within our knowledge centre, signposting to great work that's already out there. And there'll be people that we're working with in the right hand side there will have been authors of such excellent work, but also are keen to support that. And we also are looking to support and a community of practice of sorts within that space. I just want to point out at this moment that none of this is something that we want to do if it's already happening elsewhere. And we're super, super keen to support existing initiatives rather than start afresh. But we know that we have a reach that will allow us to sort of signpost, and with a very obvious name like the National Retrofit Hub, hopefully hosting some of the resources on that centralized touchstone for information will help get more traffic to all of these great resources that are out there. So this has been sort of an early stage process, and we're looking at how we can develop this more quickly, I suppose, because it's very much a need. So that's all from Working Group 5, and we'll pass to Cara Holmes now for Working Group 6.
Hello, thank you very much. Yeah, Working Group 6, I feel like I might have a little bit less to say. We're the baby working group, so we've only just started, but yeah, big ambitions for what we're doing this year. And, you know, like, I think we've had a few meetings and the enthusiasm and the commitment has been really amazing. So yeah, really looking forward to getting stuck in to the work. But kind of what I see this as.
Sorry, I'm just gonna.
Shall I keep going or?
Yeah,
right,
keep going, Cara.
I'll just keep talking, see what happens. Right, okay. So yeah, driving uptake, I think, kind of sits underneath really all of the other working groups in the way that, you know, we need people to actually do this stuff. So we need finance, we need the delivery model, but actually people need to also engage with it. So I think, you know, regardless of the perfect financial offer, regardless of the perfect supply chain, we still need people to take action. So I think that really is what is sitting in this group, and looking at how people are feeling, how people are thinking, and how we're going to sort of translate some people have interest. How do we translate the existing interest into action, and how do we kind of slowly start to move people towards being prepared to do this kind of stuff and to make these kind of changes. So if we can go on to the next slide, that would be amazing. Yeah, so the big kind of question is, what do householders need to undertake retrofit at scale? We know clearly that the existing support isn't really working, because otherwise people will be doing it. So there's some kind of problem, and our task is really to unpick what that problem might be. So we're looking at existing best practice. We'll be looking at kind of some new research as well to understand what support people need in their own personal journey, because recognizing as well that this retrofit journey is personal. People will have different entry points, and they'll have different goals and end points for what they want and what they think is a good outcome. So I think we really need to understand and hold that kind of ecosystem of desires, of needs, of wants, and be able to kind of facilitate a framework that supports that and allows that to happen and doesn't kind of force people down this like single track road. So to do that, we'll be looking at ideas around resident journey, around personas, around like sort of marketing, branding, communications. And can I go to the next slide? So output example 1. So the first thing that we're doing, we had our very, very first meeting in December, and then we kind of really thought, well, what do we need to do? This is a huge challenge. We need to try and break it down. So let's understand the literature. Let's do some stakeholder mapping, understand the current state of play. So a state of the nation, targeted output. So what is the current sort of interest and demand for retrofit measures? And looking at a stakeholder map and mapping existing activities, materials, best practices. So we have just started kind of kicking that off and clarifying how we're actually going to undertake that work and just kind of getting it out there. If anyone on this call wants to be part of that, please do let me know, or reach out to the hub or reach out to me personally, like happy to have a chat about it. But yeah, what we're hoping to do with that is really by gathering the literature, consolidating it, we'll be able to then kind of pick apart where the challenges are, where the thorns are, where the pinch points are, and really focus in on what we see as the sort of biggest areas of focus for the work. Can we go to the next slide? So yeah, this is kind of the next stage. This would be our second sort of big output, which is defining the brief, which sounds a bit like banal, but actually, as I said, it's such a huge topic that I think we really do need to be quite conscious and quite considerate of what it is that we're focusing on and how we're doing that, so that we're not spreading ourselves too thin, that we are being effective, that we are actually kind of making the changes that we want to see. So working with the other working groups, we'll be developing a theory of change and developing those SMART objectives, and then also highlighting some of the ones that require policy change. I think other people have spoken about that as well, that there will be some policy blockers along the way, that it's not just things that are things that will need sort of wider governmental change. So for this piece of work, collaborators haven't been identified, but yeah, like I've said, there's going to be crossovers with most of the other working groups. So you know, the delivery models work, supply chain work, financial support, you've heard all about it already, but that will be our kind of next big thing. And I think the big chunk of work for this year ahead for Working Group 6.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Cara. I think we'll go back to the Miro board for one final look. I'm sure, Sarah, you've got some points to come in on as well, but I think one thing that really stands out for me and that I'd really like you to all think about as well is the fact that there are lots of connections between all of these groups. So you'll have heard EPCs of sort of something that's come up in Working Group 2 and in Working Group 4. And as the hub, we really want to act as that role that can help bring together all of your opinions on what needs to change and try to work towards some sort of industry consensus. Yeah. If you're a pro at Miro, feel free to make some arrows between links that you see that we might not have seen. We'd love to crowdsource that with you.
Yeah, please co-create. Please make, I mean, I think it's really important to say, like, you know, without sending to unicorns and rainbows, you are the hub. We can't do this without you. And we really do appreciate, you know, all of your thoughts. If you feel like there's some huge gaps here, or if you feel like there's a really obvious, you know, omission, please do let us know. We are not precious. We want to get as much information here as we possibly can. And we certainly don't want to, I mean, one of our biggest bugbears is if we see, you know, duplication unnecessarily, because least of all, it's just people's energy and we can do so much more together. So please do. Nothing wrong with unicorns and rainbows. Absolutely. You saw that in the chat. I'm all about the unicorns and rainbows with 2 young girls in my household. They love it.
The other thing that I thought would be really useful to touch on from the chat was someone made the very good point of, is the hub just focusing on the owner occupier? Because you've heard a lot about that today, and a lot of the sort of investigations so far in the industry have focused on the owner occupier. Absolutely not. We want to be able to produce resources and guidance and outputs that are relevant for every tenure. Sometimes it's easier to start to focus on householders think about these things, but we know that there's a massive gap in the PRS sector. We're looking to do some research there. We're also really keen to learn from how the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund has worked. And Working Group 5 and 6 will be thinking about pathways that are suitable for all tenures and all people. And I think a really key thing from Working Group 6 as well is the idea that not everyone has the same level of power and advocacy, power and agency. So how can we map that, understand it, and try and enable positive change so that people can have more agency about what happens within their own homes?
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the things that, and certainly myself, Cara and Donal all talk about this a lot, is swapping out the word customer for resident, because that does suggest an inherent, buying power that really so many of us, or many people, do not have. And when you do start to really challenge the kind of assumptions in your language, it really does open up the conversation around how we are delivering and who we are delivering for. So that's a really important point to note as well. Yeah, I think it's recognizing like those connections that we'd be really happy to know more about between the groups as well. We have got some things in the pipeline around meetings that really bring the participants of more than one group together, because we don't really want to sit comfortably here in these working groups for however long. We want to start integrating activities that do relate to both. There was a question in the chat about where post-occupancy evaluation pops up into this, and it is on the agenda with working groups 1 and 5 to some degree. It's just a case of getting through all of the parts and the moving parts and working out where we can have maximum impact with our resource, and what makes sense, what's immediately usable as well, what actually is helping all of us out there in the delivery of retrofit. I don't know if you had anything further, Rachel, or if we want
the only other point was a few people have been asking about our relationship with government and government departments, and it's probably worth touching on the fact that as the hub, we're developing lots of strategic partnerships. We've got strategic partnerships with DLUC, with DESNES, but also with industry bodies, BEST in Scotland, the Welsh hub in Wales, the Belfast Retrofit Hub in Northern Ireland, the CLC, the BSI, for example. And the idea of those partnerships is that we want to be sharing what we're doing, what the industry is doing, what the industry thinks back to those organizations, but also getting their feedback on what they're doing. So we're trying to be quite open and transparent with them. And we really want to support government and other bodies to make change that the industry is calling for to make retrofit possible at scale. But yeah, maybe if we go now back to the presentation, Ben, we've got a few more points to touch on. So you'll have seen a question at the start that you all contributed to about where the hub has most potential for value. We'd like you to now sort of reflect on where you think we have the most potential for impact, bearing in mind everything that you've heard, what you've seen on the Miro board, and also your opinions probably that might have predated this meeting. So please do. There might be, you'll use the existing Menti link, and there's a code there at the top. 1 or 2 word responses would be great, and we'll see what changes may have been made, what you've taken away from all of that. Drive for strategy, I like it. National coordination. Community is a big one there again. Place-based approaches, really key, something that's we're sort of looking at across all of our groups, and we're really keen to engage with more.
Yeah, keep your eyes out for an exciting meeting that we'll have coming that starts to look into the place-based approaches that we are aware of, and look at that data policy. Do you know what? Collaboration and coordination, I feel like we've touched a real pain point there. That seems to be what everybody is desperate for. I will say, we do say this all the time. We do talk about the fact that we are established to convene and to encourage collaboration and to enable all of that. And it's an easy thing to say. It's quite a task to do. And this is probably what we'll get to now shortly, is this is how you can get involved and how you can make that sort of collaboration and coordination become more of an active reality. I think we can probably move, 140 responses, it's still going.
I think that will keep collecting your responses as
you
put them in.
Yeah, so you can keep doing that.
So yeah, if we go to the next slide, Ben. Sarah, do you want to cover this
Yeah,
one?
so like many of you, I suppose you'll all be at Future Build, so will we. We were approached to put on the programming for day 3 on the retrofit stage. So we'll be there on the 7th of March. And not only that, but each as several members of our board, some of whom are on the call today, and Rachel and myself will also be speaking on the conference stage on some of the other days. But we will be running 4 sessions on day 3. Some of you on the call might already have been invited to be some of our speakers and guest speakers on that. So you can see the 4 sessions that we've planned are on data-led decision-making that keeps citizens at the heart, thriving communities and a just transition, retrofit and donut economics, one-stop shop delivery approaches with a focus on local resilient networks, and engaging on retrofit, getting communication right. What we really, really wanted to do was take the opportunity when you have a group of people, like-minded people together, how do we have the conversation that really challenges us? You know, let's get really into like the big systems thinking pieces around like what are some of the big real problems here? You know, we've got the opportunity to just not focus on our day-to-day, but really get into the big thinking. So that's where we will be. We look forward to seeing you there. Yeah, do you want to,
Yeah, I can touch on this one. So yeah, if you like what you've seen, we would really encourage you to get involved. We've got a slide on that and how you can do that in more detail. But there's also potential to become a sponsor. So we are very grateful to Innovate UK for sponsoring us, and we also have a great collection of partners and sponsors. You can view them all on our website who help support the work that we do. We couldn't do any of this without them. If you think that your organisation would like to become a sponsor and really get a bit more involved in our work, join our advisory panel, and help to influence and prioritize what we do, please do get in touch with us and let us know. You'd be very welcome. If you go on to the next slide, Ben. So there's also opportunities to get involved in all of our working groups. They're all ongoing at the moment. They're in different phases. We've got big meetings coming up in working groups 1 and 4 in March. If you're already in those groups, you will have received an invite for 4. Working group 1 invite should come out in the next week or so. And then other groups are in task and finish stage. So we're really in the focused small group meetings where we're trying to get individual activities done. And then working group 5 will also have a meeting in March, which if you're part of that group, you'll receive an invite to shortly. Next slide. Do you want to go to this one, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say as well, of course, if you're not involved in working group and you would like to be able to receive those comms about those particular groups, we'll come to how you can do that. You can do that on our website. Actually, as I keep forgetting, our website does function like it's supposed to. So if you go on to working groups on our website, you can find the link to connect and become part of our working groups. Oh, thank you. That's great. Ben's just so good at this, getting to the actual useful slide for us. So you can sign up to our newsletter, you can join our working groups, and you can get in touch if you'd like to become a partner or a sponsor as well. All of that's available on our working groups, or you can send us an email, info@nationalretrofithub.org.uk. Yeah, so we can go back to the other exciting news we have. We are hiring. We are looking for a technical program manager. This is going to be such a crucial role for us. We are hoping to have this role in place that will help work across all of the working groups in delivering these outputs that we've set out in the Miro board. So it is about being that cross-pollinator across the groups and working directly with the hub core team, as well as the co-chairs, chairs and technical leads of the working groups. And I think that this is a role that will really help accelerate our work in tying those different strands together. So please do have a look or share that amongst your networks of anybody that you think would be interested in such a role. As Rachel said, if she wasn't co-director, that would be the perfect job for her, but I'm not letting her leave.
As I was writing it, I did think this is a fantastic job. So, of course, we're biased.
Yes.
But yes, it will be a really transformational position to be able to really speed up some of the outputs that we've envisioned for our working groups and help us deliver that transformational change. So yeah, please do check that out. We'll put a link in the chat and get your applications across. I think that is probably where we wind up. we'll keep that Miro board open. We will send you all an email with this meeting recording, a transcript of the chat, because there's been a lot of value going on there.
The chat is on fire today. There's so much. I got lost in it sometimes, but there's some really interesting things there. And I hope that where you have been leaving comments, you've been able to see how a lot of what you've been talking about is being addressed in the working groups. And like we said, again, if you think that your comment is something that really does need to be addressed, then find the working group that's related to you. Or just sign up to the newsletter so you can kind of pay attention to what's going on. Yeah.
And also a huge thank you to our working group chairs, our working group technical leads, our board, and our board chair, Lynn. We couldn't do it without you all. So yeah, thank you so much.
And to our team behind the scenes, to Ben and Rachel Brown as well. Thank you so much for making this smooth. And 15 minutes to spare. Everybody can go and have a coffee before your next meeting.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.